I've learned over the years as to do that full time is unwise. And so I have to figure out, what am I making each job? What am I making for my time? And then how does that go back into the cost of business? Hey everyone, Adam Mason here with the Bearded Talk podcast, where we dive into what it takes to run a successful business and how to achieve work-life balance. I'm your host. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we're talking about how to price yourself for long-term success. So this is going to be a big series. I think it's going to be packed with value and practical tips that you can take to really figure out how you should be pricing yourself, not just immediately, but also for long-term success and how to grow in those prices. So for me, I think this is one of the most complicated things when I first started as professionals, especially in the photography industry. We're prone to kind of just price ourselves like other people around us. People in our market, we think our work matches them, and we say, hey, I can do that. And then we price ourselves like them and wonder why we don't get any clients, and we kind of miss the process. And I think what we got to get into in this podcast is getting to the process, the podcast and the process. Anyway, you guys with me? Awesome. I think, too, the other way people are out of touch is with how much it costs to run a business long term. You know, even if that's over a year or over 5 years, people think very short term. If I make X amount of dollars, I have X amount of dollars. And honestly, we know as business owners that that's not really the case. But it's hard to deviate from that, especially if your baseline, say you have like a spouse or you're overlapping. So that means you already have a regular job, 9 to 5, paying the bills. Then you might just look at it as all profit. And so we're going to kind of dive into that in the first episode of pricing yourself for long-term success. And so I believe when you want to price yourself for long-term success, that involves 3 things to get to your price. It's the cost of business, which is how much your business costs over a year. I think that's easier. So some of your subscriptions and stuff, I think that's easier because some of your subscriptions and stuff like that, some of your yearly costs, website upkeep or domain registration, and even too, when you get further into it, things like insurance and tax bills, accountants and gear rentals and gear repairs and computers and all that stuff. That's the cost of your business over a year. Then there's also the cost of the job. So that's the cost of that specific job. Some jobs, that's zero practical dollars. Maybe you're doing a shoot in your house and you had to like photograph, I don't know, the couch that you already have. And you're like, all right, well, it didn't cost me anything to do this, or you had to drive to somewhere, you had to pay for gas, you had to pay for food, you had to pay for tolls, had to pay for another employee to come help you out with this thing, you had to pay for rental gear that you didn't own, you had to pay for studio time. That's the cost of the job. And then thirdly, the cost of your time. And so the cost of the time is relative to your experience, how much you think you're worth, the value of your business in the market that you're at. The value of a photographer in DC is going to be much different than somebody in Iowa or the Yukon Territory, Canada. Those 3 things are going to be very different. I think the cost of time is very relative based on your experience. And so we'll talk about that as well. But today in part 1, we're only talking about the cost of your business. You would be surprised at how much it costs to run your business over the year, especially because money isn't paid to you in yearly most of the time. It's paid to you monthly or occasionally or weekly. It's really difficult to gauge how much you're making over the year and then also how much your business costs over the year. The first thing to look at when it comes to figuring out the cost of your business over the year is your fixed costs. Those are the costs that wouldn't change no matter how much you worked or how much you didn't work. So for me, if I have 1 wedding or 100 weddings, this doesn't really change. So those can be things like Dropbox, which has like a yearly membership, or Shootproof or Pass, or, even if you use something like Evernote, well, it's $25 a year. And that might seem minuscule, but it's good to know that that's $2 per month towards your business. Things like your website, things like hosting and your domain registration, if you have a custom URL like adammason.com or something like that, those things all cost money over time in the year. And then additionally, if you're making over $600 or you need to check out the IRS minimum wherever you're living, if you make over $600, you have to claim taxes and you have to tell the IRS about it, here in the States at least. How much are those taxes going to cost? Do you know even how much taxes usually are for what we do? It's good to look at those numbers and figure that out. So one of the things I do is I just make a spreadsheet of every single cost of something that I didn't pay for monthly or cost of the job. So if cost of job items are specifically for cost of the job, this would just be the cost of the business ones. So in mine, for example, in my spreadsheet, I have camera gear because that's going to be paid for over the course of a year. Hopefully, maybe longer sometimes, depending on your equipment. Taxes, I have website domain, Dropbox, Adobe Creative Cloud, something I pay for as well, depending on what your software you use. Those kinds of things are super crucial and I think are very important to figure out when trying to figure out the cost of your business. It's also good to know the cost of your business for pricing yourself for long-term success. Honestly, because you want to figure out, what do I want to profit? What are my costs? How much do I actually want to make from this business that I'm doing? For some of you, that could be nothing, and you really just want to take photos or do your business out of the goodness of your heart. That's awesome. I think that's really cool. Sometimes the business costs money to run, though, and the larger your dream gets, sometimes you need money to support it, and that's okay. One of the things that I do is I make a spreadsheet of all of the costs that it takes to run Mason Photography over the year. And some of this stuff might seem really obvious, and some of it might seem really obscure. Because honestly, when we're thinking about what would it take to run our business long-term, full-time, there's a lot of things that aren't photography related. They're not necessarily related to the main goal of what your business does, whether you're a writer or own a coffee shop or something like that. Some examples of those things, again, are going to be like the hosting and the domain costs for my website. That's important, and that's a big deal. I want to make sure that that's up and running all the time. I want to make sure that I can sustain that website because that's my portfolio. My website's an employee that helps me get clients, help them find out more about me. The second thing, and this might be silly that I put it second, but I think it's really important, is actually business insurance. If you're charging money to do any kind of work, it might seem crazy and it's a little scary, but if you're going to do this long term, I would seriously look into business insurance. We'll have another episode on what I use for my business insurance, what to look for, and maybe I have a friend that does business insurance. Maybe we can have him on and just kind of talk about that. So that'll be really awesome. The third thing is equipment. And I know that might sound weird to think about over a year, but maybe if you wanted to use the spreadsheet to think about your business over 3 years, you could also do that, or however long it takes to use that equipment. More expensive equipment when it comes to like taxes and kind of all the official stuff, it depreciates over time. And for some higher cost items, that's longer than others. And so it's just something to think about. But also too, are you going to buy any new gear over the year? And would you like your business to pay for that? Or if you're overlapping or have a spouse that's contributing money for you or somebody else is paying for that gear, do you want them to pay for it? Do you want that to be in the business cost? Another thing that doesn't really come up that often when you're starting out, but comes up a lot, and it's pretty annoying when you're doing this as a full-time job, is repairs of gear. I've had my gear into repair multiple times this year, and it can get expensive. It can be almost as expensive as buying new gear. And it's something to plan for, because if you're not planned for it, then not even regular business insurance covers it. And if you need it for a shoot or you need it, it's very crucial, then that's going to be tough. And so I always recommend putting a repairs budget into your yearly cost. But again, if you're just starting out, this is all optional. It's really, the goal is just for you to line up everything that you pay for over the year and know what it costs you over the year per month. And then even too, I like to know this just because this is kind of weird, is how much it costs me a day to run Mason Photography. And so maybe in the next episode, I'll total that up for you guys and let you know how much it costs to run per day. Another thing that I always want to consider when you're planning out how much your business is going to cost over the year and over time is accounting. You might be good at accounting, or you might use TurboTax or something like that. But for me, as I grew in my business, I knew that accounting was something I wanted to delegate and I wanted to hand off, because I would rather spend my time creating photographs, spending time with people, learning stories, or just having me time than working on accounting and taxes and bookkeeping and all that stuff. If you don't know how much accounting costs, you could ask a few accountants around or CPAs or in any of the good photography forums online. We could talk about that. The next thing, and this is always a mystery when I see new business owners starting their business and they have no idea how this is going to happen. But if you're planning to be full-time, that means your benefits have to be full-time. And at least in the United States, we're required by law to have health insurance. One of the things to plan for paying yourself is paying for your health insurance over the cost of a year. And so that can be $1,000 a year for some folks. And I know friends that pay like $10,000 a year because they have families and stuff like that. So that's a lot to consider when it comes to pricing and the cost of your particular business. But I think it's really crucial to know the cost of your business, because if you don't know the cost of your business over time, it's hard to know, even with each job, if you're making actual profit and if you're going to successfully last over time. It's really crucial not to just price yourself for the immediate and not price yourself as in, hey, I want to do this gig so I can buy this thing. When I was growing up, my stepdad, he's a master carpenter. He would always do certain side jobs. And after you do that side job, it always seemed like that job was specifically allocated to go purchase something. And it was a really good way of thinking. It was quid pro quo. It kept things easy outside of his regular full-time job. But I've learned over the years as to do that full-time is unwise. And so I have to figure out, what am I making each job? What am I making for my time? And then how does that go back into the cost of business? Does that make sense? So cost of your business, cost of job, and cost of your time. So today we talked about cost of business. If you have any more questions about things you should add and things that you should pay yearly or things that you should pay monthly, I think that you should put everything that is monthly and everything that is not for a specific gig into your cost of business spreadsheet. If you need any help with that, feel free to email me at thebeardedtalk@gmail.com, or have any ideas or things that I missed or should have added, let me know. Thanks for listening, guys. This was a short one. Next episode is about the cost of the specific job. Thanks for listening, guys. Please, 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 please. I know this is the second episode, but leave a review on iTunes. Even if it's 1 star. Honestly, if you think this is a terrible podcast, go leave a review. Tell me. Let me know what you think. I would love to get some reviews. Please leave a 5-star review. Yeah. Let's be real. I love you forever.